Today, I'm going to talk about my marriage story full of laughter and anger. So please listen to me. My name is Ella. I'm 27 years old. I work in the fashion industry. I met my boyfriend James, who is 5 years older than me, at a local marriage activity party. Why did I go to this party? My friend had just broken up with her boyfriend. She asked me to come with her. I didn't care if I got married or not, so I thought I'd just drink and eat and go home. But then, James approached me. He contacted me as soon as we were connected on social media. When I met him, he praised me highly. I was comfortable with him. I was used to dating cool guys, so his direct reaction was something new for me. And we ended up going out. Well, in short, I was flattered by him. We both lived alone. Soon, we were going back and forth to each other's houses. The more time we spent together, the closer we got. And he began to show little by little his true self. But at that time, I didn't notice that anything he said or did was strange or that something was wrong with his behavior. The one thing that sticks out in my mind is when he was taking a bath, there was an incoming call on his phone. The screen lit up, and when I looked at it, I saw the word Kansas. He came back from his bath. I asked him, "Who is Kansas?" He said,
My boss. I've recently been transferred, so I've forgotten who she is."
He answered with some impatience. She has an unusual name, doesn't she?
"Oh yes, that's right. It's something like, some country name."
I wondered what he was in such a hurry for, but I didn't question it that much, so I didn't pursue it any further. I didn't know that this was a harbinger of terrible things to come. Looking back, other strange things happened too. The day after he stayed at my place, I borrowed his car to go to grocery shopping. His car was easier to maneuver in the supermarket, so we used to use his car. After breakfast, he went back to bed to get a nap because he was tired from working overtime the day before. I decided to go alone. I got into his car and operated the car navigation system to check traffic jams. It showed a history of directions to my house from an unknown location. He said he worked late at the office and came straight to my house. It is almost a straight road from his office to my house. The place where he left according to the car navigation was the opposite direction from his office. But I was carefree. I thought he was checking out the place where he was going to go for business. I took it as a good thing. But there was also a hidden reason behind the incident. We continued our relationship, and he proposed to me. I had no reason to refuse. I was in love with him at the time, so I accepted his proposal, and we were preparing to get married. On our anniversary, 1 year after we started dating, we booked a wedding venue and proceeded with all the arrangements. It wasn't a fancy ceremony, but the preparation for the wedding was still very exciting. The first time I tried on a wedding dress, I was so happy and excited. The guests were only my closest friends and family. My parents, my sister, and a few relatives. James' parents had passed away, so his aunts, uncles, and cousins were going to attend. Preparations were progressing steadily. All we had to do was to wait for the ceremony. But a week before the wedding, he started to say some strange things.
"I'm feeling kind of sick. What if I collapse on the wedding day? The weather forecast is for rain on the day of the wedding. Do you think it's safe to hold the ceremony?"
Honestly, I thought what the hell is he talking about? What the hell is he thinking? If you're not feeling well, take care of yourself. The chapel and the ceremony are both indoors. Rain doesn't matter, right? If you think about the road trip for the attendees, I'd rather have sunshine than rain, of course. but that's not what he's worried about. I let his comments slide. I quietly proceeded with the preparations for the ceremony. And finally, on the day of the wedding, the actual weather betrayed the forecast and we were blessed with clear skies. All the attendees arrived safely. It was a small ceremony with only a few people invited, but I was very happy. It was a nice ceremony and reception. The incident happened at the after party afterward. The after party was attended by my friends from school and colleagues from my current job, and even friends from social media with whom I got closer by talking about fashion. I had a lot of people there. In contrast, his friends were less than half of mine. But he's not from around here. He got transferred by his company, so I thought it was only natural. He took the microphone to greet the start of the after party. He took a deep breath and said loudly,
I'm sorry. I have a wife and child. That's why I can't marry you, Ella.
The room was quiet for a moment, but soon the crowd started to shout in anger. But he told me in no uncertain terms.
I'm sorry. Please forget about this marriage. It never happened. I will return the congratulatory gifts to the people who came to the wedding, and I will pay for the wedding.
He said it just like that. He ran out of the restaurant where the after party was held and never came back. I was surrounded by my friends. They comforted me. They expressed their anger. Some of them even cried for me. Thank you, but don't cry for me. I've asked the restaurant to prepare something delicious for you. Now we should drink and have fun. Let's laugh a lot together. I opened a bottle of champagne with a few of my friends and drank a lot while pouring the champagne. While my friends and I were screaming in desperation, his friends had all disappeared. I mean, the groom said all that stuff and ran off. They couldn't stay here, right? I was convinced like that. But later, it turned out that this wasn't the only reason they left. After the after party, where we laughed a lot and made a lot of noise, I took a cab home by myself. Fortunately, we decided to move into our new house after the wedding, so I could go back to the house I had been living in. We have already signed the contract for the new house we were supposed to live in together, but I need to cancel it. He said we would do the registry of our marriage after the wedding. Maybe it was because he already has a wife. I have to return the congratulatory gift as soon as possible. Who did I leave it with? I had to get in touch with him, so I took my phone. On the screen, he and I had big smiles on our faces. I remember that I had set my wallpaper to a photo of him and me. The lock screen is a picture of our first date. After unlocking the screen, I see a picture of us on our vacation at the beach. I was so happy at that time. As soon as I thought like that, tears filled my eyes. I was finally able to cry when I was alone, whining and crying like a child. My head ached from crying so much, and I began to feel heavy with swollen eyelids. Don't think I'm going to let you get away with this. I will never forgive you. I mumbled in a low voice, with full of anger. After that, my memory was cut off. I must have fallen asleep, as if someone turned my battery off. When I woke up, my head was clear, but my mind was a blur. But I thought it was only natural. I didn't touch my phone for a while, and there was thousands of messages and incoming calls. I first called my parents, who were staying over for the wedding. My parents were informed about the incident of the groom's bombshell via a friend who attended the after party, and they were extremely worried about me. Anyway, I want to reassure everyone I met yesterday. So to those who came to the ceremony and the after party yesterday, I sent a message. I'm okay despite everything that has happened. I have calmed down. I will let you know if there is any further information. After that, I asked my closest friend to come to my house. My best friend knows my personality very well. I wanted to talk to her about what I was going to do. Of course, I'm not going to let that guy get away with this. I won't just ask her for advice on how to harm him more than he already did to me. James' phone was, as expected, disconnected. He must have blocked me or changed his number. First of all, I had to find out whether it was true that he had a wife and a child. I asked my friends who attended the after party. I would like to hire a detective to find out the groom's background. Does anyone have any experience with this kind of things? I sent this kind of message. Then, I got a reply from a colleague at my workplace. She got a connection to a detective agency because her friend used it when she got a divorce. I immediately contacted the detective agency and asked them to investigate. It took them less than a week to find out who James was. As a result, he indeed has a wife and a child. Furthermore, he told me his parents were dead, so that's why he called his close relatives to attend the wedding. But actually, his parents are still alive. They live in the near town where his wife lives. I also found out that he came to my city as a temporary postaway from his family, and that he went back to the house where his wife was waiting for him about twice a month. With all this information, I started to make a move. 3 days later, I got a paid day off. First, I went to James' parents' house. They seemed a bit anxious because a young woman, a stranger, came out of the blue to visit. I got down on my knees in front of his parents, who were wary of my presence. Please, I beg you, I want to marry James no matter what. His parents panicked and asked me what has happened. I showed them the wedding photos and explained briefly what had happened. They wanted to hear the full story, so they let me in the house and I told them everything. I told them that I had met him at the marriage activity party and almost got married. How he dropped a bombshell at the after party of the wedding and ran away. As I was telling the story, I felt like a tragic heroine. I was surprised that I even cried, but I used my tears for my acting as a poor woman. After he disappeared at the after party, I couldn't get in touch with him. Somehow, I only found out where his parents lived, so I just had to barge in like this. Where's James now? Where is he? Can I marry him? And then, his parents looked at each other and said,
I'm sorry, but James indeed has a wife and a child. I didn't hear about their divorce, so I don't think he can marry you.
I exaggeratedly broke down in tears. After that, I said, I understand. I apologize for my behavior. I give up the marriage with James. I pretended to back out and left his parents' house. I left the wedding photo at his parents' house on purpose. I intentionally left it. I wanted his parents to see the evidence of what James had done. When I left their house, the next step was to call his wife. After greeting her politely, I started to explain. I am a woman living in the neighborhood where James lives now. James and I went out, and we even made a promise to marry. Even though I didn't know he was married, I'm sorry for what I did to you, who is his wife. I revealed everything at once. Now, what is her reaction? Would she think it's a prank call? Or would she panic and get angry? His wife's response was neither of them. She took a deep breath. If that is true what you are saying, I would like to meet you and talk with you face to face. She said that in a clear tone of voice. I met her at a cafe a few hours later. His wife was calm and seemed intelligent. We talked for a few hours, but she was not once distraught during that time. We exchanged our contact information for the future and parted ways. About a month later, she contacted me. I got ready with my parents and went to visit them. I went to the parents' house of James' wife, which was just a few minutes away from the house where James and his family lives. The people who gathered there were his wife and her parents, me and my parents, James and his parents. Their child stayed at home and was not with us. We were taken to the guest room, and as everyone took their seats, the discussion began. A gong rings in my brain to announce the start of the fight. Now let the battle begin. James opened his mouth first after being poked by his father.
I'm sorry that you all gathered like this. I apologize. Ella, I'm sorry I couldn't marry you, but I'm not lying about how much I love you, Ella. I love Ella, who is beautiful and healthy.
Then what am I? His wife asks coldly.
I love you, Kansas, too. You take care of me like a mother. You work as a caregiver. That's why you are good at taking care of me.
While he was talking to his wife, I was reminded of a phone call I saw when we were dating. He took advantage of my misunderstanding and just lied that it was his boss's name, but actually, it was his wife's first name. It was a conversation full of lies. That's so ridiculous. James, let me ask you something. You say you love us both, me and your wife, Kansas. But what if you had to choose between us?
I can't do that. That's why we are in this mess. It's called bigamy, right? I didn't realize that marrying two women would be a crime. I wanted to call off the wedding, but I didn't have the courage. I just got scared and ran away.
You say you didn't realize it? No one would agree to that.
That's enough. I can't stand to see you being like this as my son. Take responsibility for what you did.
He slammed his fist on the table and yelled at him. It was his father.
But how do I take responsibility?
He blurted out pathetically. I stepped forward. I was waiting for this moment. Pay me what you owe me first. The wedding and after-party expenses. Instead of pretending the marriage never happened, you said you'd pay for it, and alimony for the emotional and social damage caused by you. I think it will be at least $3 million in total.
What?
Next, it is Kansas' turn. I want a divorce. Of course, since it's your fault, I will ask you to pay alimony and child support. I will never give up custody.
I don't want that kind of divorce. I don't want to be separated from our child. Besides, if something happens to my parents, who is going to take care of them?
Huh? I and Kansas gave the same reaction. But this is a matter of married couple. It's something that should be said by the parties involved. I gestured for Kansas to go ahead and step back. James, if anything happens to your parents, you take care of them. I'm a caregiver, but I didn't get the qualification to take care of your parents. Even if you say you don't want a divorce, I have proof that you cheated on me. I will definitely ask you to divorce me.
Proof?
In front of him, crying and sputtering, I rolled up my arms and stood up in front of him. I'm the one you cheated on her with. I didn't know I was your cheating partner. There is plenty of evidence that you and I almost got married. Besides, you also had other women besides me.
How did you know?
It wasn't me who found out about the affair with the woman he met through a dating app, but the detective who did the background check on him. The detective was following him to check out his home. It just so happened that he saw him going into a hotel with a woman other than his wife. So I asked him to investigate the affair incidentally. You are so sloppy. You went on dating apps and talked to girls. You lied about being single again. Now that I think about it, you even set your car navigation system to take you from a motel to my place. How could you do such a terrible thing? And then you tell us you love us. Who would believe that? Me smugly with my phone in my hand. I feel like a hero in a movie. He collapsed and mumbled helplessly.
Cheating is just cheating and not something serious. My ex-girlfriend said I could do it as long as I didn't get caught.
That might have been fine with your ex-girlfriend, but it's not the same with me or Kansas. I'm not like that, and neither is she.
Ella and Kansas, you are two very different types. I love you both. I didn't want to break up with one of you.
Unfortunately, we both hate you more than anything in the world. I said it directly and went back to my parents. And once again, I stood in line with my parents to apologize for both to James and Kansas' parents. I'm sorry for the trouble I've caused. I was planning to get married to James. I was very shocked by what happened. But now that you've invited me here, I could say everything I wanted to say to him. I will ask my lawyer to take care of all the alimony matters. I don't think I will see you all again. Even though I didn't know, I'm so sorry for the damage I've done to you and your relationship. I'm truly sorry. And because I didn't have to be there when they discussed their divorce, my parents and I left them alone. When I heard his bombshell at the after party, I felt so gloomy that I thought it was the end of the world. But at this moment, I was in a sunny mood like a blue sky after a typhoon. I took up my phone and sent a message to all the members of the after party. A lot has happened, but it's all over now. The sky is clear. I'm fine. Let's have another drink together soon. I will give you the details then. So, what happened to that lousy guy? He paid me for everything. Maybe his parents took over for him. My best friend and I are relaxing in a room at a luxurious hotel, glasses of wine in hand. We are going on a little getaway when it's all over. That is what she promised me during that incident. I agreed to the plan. Hey Ella, that's not what I meant. I've heard before that you received money from that man. I mean, that guy. Didn't he suffer some kind of punishment or something? I heard he's being hurt enough to deserve what he's done. My friend said with a twinkle in her eye. Tell me more. I told her what I knew. The cost of the wedding, the alimony to me, and the alimony to his wife after their divorce was finalized, and child support. That alone would be quite a lot of money. Plus, he had debts. All of the groom's relatives and friends who came to the ceremony and the after party were all paid agents. Because of the number of people who attended, the bill from the agency was quite a lot. He couldn't pay it with his savings, so he borrowed money from a bank. The address of his parents' house was changed to a rental apartment. Kansas said he must have sold the parents' house to pay off the debt. Wow, that guy's parents went through a disaster. True, but they made sure they get back the money he owes them. And they're not going to have any other kind of a relationship with him. I heard they are going to cut off all ties with him. And how is he doing at work? I heard he is still working at the same workplace. It's hard to hide what has happened because it was such a big incident. People at his work know about everything, so I heard it's not very comfortable. My best friend smiled and said she's relieved that he got that punishment. I agreed with her. I laughed, I got mad, I got angry. It's been a really busy few months. I've had a lot of hard times being stuck with a jerk. But more than that, I had a lot of support from my parents. I've had a lot of encouragement and help from so many people. No matter what happened, I realized that I'm not alone. I don't know if I will ever want to get married again, or if any bad things will happen again, but I'm sure I will be fine. I will smile and do well tomorrow.
Your mother passed away? So? Haven't I told you last week that I got a big gathering with relatives here today? I was shocked by what my mother-in-law said. Well, I'm in the middle of her funeral right now. None of my business. Get here ASAP. I'm having once-a-year party, and I'm short-handed here. I was too hurt that I almost burst into tears. My mother passed away at a young age of 53. My mother-in-law was trying to pull me away from saying my last goodbyes. Her reason was just for the once-a-year party. But her voice on the phone sounded serious, like she hadn't said anything wrong. If I didn't comply with her, I shuddered to think what kind of harassment awaited me in the future. Suddenly, I'm on my way. I replied in a trembling voice and let my tears flow freely. My name is Wendy, 27 years old. My husband Paul and I just got married this year. He is a ceramic designer at a tableware brand. It was just a coincidence that he and I, who was an anatomy assistant, crossed the path. Paul happened to be free and brought a document that normally passed through the finance department to the admin office. That's how we met the first time. He is from a family of artists. His father, Tom, is a painter, and his sister and brother also work in an art-related field. I wondered if I would fit in well with such a family without having much of an artistic sense, but they welcomed me warmly. Well, not all of them to be exact. There is one person who is displeased with me for suddenly appearing and settling with her son. The person with resentment is Debbie, my mother-in-law. She's been especially fond of Paul, who is the most talented among her children. When he was still at university, she tried to control his future by interfering with his job search and even his dating life. She even tried to set up a marriage while he was still a student, which is hardcore. He thought she was a nuisance, so he rejected all her suggestions, get a job on his own, and decided to marry me. It's kind of a defense against his mother. Given that, it's not difficult to imagine that she loathes me. Every time she and I meet, you came too, wearing another out of fashion. I'm ashamed to see my daughter-in-law walking around in public, looking like that. Oh God, Wendy, what makes you think you can just sit there and do nothing? She would make a sarcastic remark after another as much. If I try to help as I told, she complains about my every move and makes me feel so small. Fortunately, Paul and the rest of the family don't just watch it happen. My mom's treatment of you, it's so terrible. I'm going to the upcoming memorial services by myself. Whatever she says, I'll just make up something. I'm very sorry about my wife. She still carries the resentment about not being able to control Paul. I'll scold her too. But if she doesn't change, don't worry about coming here. Paul and my father-in-law Tom both look out for me and make arrangements so that she and I would have a little contact as possible. Minimal visits to in-laws. When I'm there, Paul never leaves my side to protect me from Debbie's sarcasm. From her point of view, that adds more oil to the fire. But since she's been warned by Tom and Paul, she couldn't say much to me. Seriously, you were so good at fooling Paul and Tom. So far, I've been able to escape her sarcastic attack with only a little remark. How's it going, honey? All good here. How about you? Not overworked? Yeah. I'm quite busy, but what to do? I miss you and your home cooking. If you work hard, you'll be rewarded with whatever you want to eat upon your return. It's already at night there? Have a good rest and be ready for tomorrow. Thanks. I'll go sleep now. I sighed as I hang up the international call. Paul's business trip abroad was suddenly decided last week. He was told that the designer had to supervise the work at a manufacturing plant overseas. It wasn't unusual for him, but it was the first time decided so suddenly that preparations were hectic. He normally rented a portable Wi-Fi or similar if he was going to be on a long business trip. But this time, he was too rushed to get it done at the last minute. Until it was ready over there, the only time to contact him was when he had Wi-Fi in the hotel room. I was supposed to be alone for a while, so I planned to stretch my wings and visit my parents for the first time in a long time. Then my phone I just put away rang. Wondering if it was Paul again, I saw a strange number on the screen. Even though I was reluctant, I answered the call. My mother? It was from the hospital where my mother was taken to after the car accident. I can't remember exactly what happened after the call. When I arrived at the hospital in a rush, my mother was lying in the bed with so many tubes hooked on the machines. The doctors tried everything they could, but she passed away on the night of the accident. She had my brother and me at a young age, and after my father passed away, she raised us alone. She was only 53 years old. My older brother, who got there late, fell down on the floor in tears after seeing her corpse. The driver of the other vehicle got down on the floor and apologized frantically. No matter how much he did, she wasn't going to come back. I couldn't give him my forgiveness then, and just watched him in silence. After all the paperwork was done, my brother decided to be the chief mourner. She had never been a fan of big events in her life, so we thought she wouldn't have liked a grand funeral. We only called close relatives and friends and arranged a humble farewell. Of course, I called Paul right away. Oh no! What to do? I'll arrange my return. Don't worry, my brother is taking care of things. If you come back now, it'll create a big dent in your work. My mom respected your work, so she won't be happy if you did that. Well, okay. She was so kind to me. I wish I could have been there to say my farewell. Anyway, I'll try to get my work done ASAP and come home sooner. Okay, hon. Don't push yourself too hard. He and my mother had a good relationship. I could hear him fighting back tears on the other end of the phone, and I almost cried along. The wake and the ceremony went smoothly, and the burial was to be done next. My brother and I were both slumped with so many things to take care of. We didn't even have time to just mourn. My mother's coffin was placed in a hearse, and we were waiting for the procession to begin. Then I realized that my phone in my bag had numerous missed calls. I thought those were from my mother's friends, as I've already received many. Although I was fortunate to know there were so many people who cared about her. It was difficult to answer to all once the ceremony started. I decided to take the call, which just came in, and turn off my phone afterward. I ran to the side of the church and answered my phone. Yes, this is Wendy. Hi, Wendy. What are you up to? The deafening high-pitched voice hurt my brain. I pulled my phone away from my ear and checked the screen. There it was. The name of my mother-in-law. I had Paul inform his family about my mother. Tom had a family engagement, so he didn't come to the ceremony. Instead, he attended the wake the day before. Then I remembered he came along without Debbie. I wasn't surprised, as I expected her not to show up to the funeral of the mother of her resentful daughter-in-law. What am I up to? I'm in the middle of my mother's funeral. Oh, right. I think Tom mentioned something about it. By the way, I'm short-handed over here. Come and help me ASAP. Come over now? I've told you there is a big gathering of my family today before. Did you think you didn't need to join because Paul was away? Wishful thinking. I tried hard to explain the situation, but she was determined to have me there. In the end, she asserted, "So what if your mother's dead? You got more important things to do here. Don't you play a heroine of the tragedy." She stabbed my heart with such force. It was the very last moment of funeral with my mother. But if I didn't comply with her, I shuddered to think what kind of harassment awaited me in the future. I told my brother that I had some errands to run and drove off in a car. Fortunately, the in-laws' house wasn't so far from the church. I didn't even try to wipe my tears off and just maneuvered the handle. When I entered the in-laws' house, all the relatives were startled. No wonder, as I was in a plain black dress suit in a group of the cheerfully dressed crowd, and anyone could tell that I had been crying. Debbie rushed over to me, not caring everyone was watching, and she spoke in a loud voice. "Finally, you're here. It's been hectic without enough help. At such an important time like this, making excuses about your family and stuff. I wonder if you have any sense of being a daughter-in-law of this family. In a situation like mine, who cared about your party? Wendy?" With no energy to argue, I was about to be dragged into the kitchen by Debbie. But I stopped when I was called from behind. I turned around to see one of the relatives with whom Paul had some business interactions, looking at me with a surprised look on his face. He seemed to find it hard to believe that I was there. "Why are you here?" Before I could answer him, Debbie quickly intervened. "I called her up in a hurry because there weren't enough people in the kitchen." Wendy tried to bail out with the excuse of some family stuff, even though everyone has gathered here. How dare she make up a lie in front of me? "But your mother is Heather Williams, right?" "Yes, right. My company informed me that she passed away, and there is a funeral today. I was told that the outsiders weren't allowed to attend, but prepare a condolence message. I am truly sorry for your loss. This happened so suddenly." "Thank you." Debbie looked puzzled at the exchange between me and the relative. She seemed to be totally at loss. The relative gave me a pat on my shoulder, scowled at her. "Debbie, dragging out a person who just lost her mother like this is indeed heartless," he sternly scolded her. Suddenly yelled at. She didn't seem to have a grip on reality and looked around pleadingly with blinking eyes. But all the relatives around us seemed to have known about my mother's obituary and gave her a cold stares. "But wait, why?" Why do you all know about her mother's passing? Of course, the death of the famous potter is the top news in the industry. My mother had made a name for herself as a potter for several years. It was originally one of the hobbies she took up when my brother and I became independent, but she quickly developed the talent for it. She became an up-and-coming craft artist whose name was known in the industry. Paul, who works for a tableware brand, and Tom, who was a painter, knew about and interacted with her. But Debbie was the only one who wasn't aware of it. In any way, it was easy to find out my mother was a potter with a click of a search. And I wasn't intentionally hiding the fact. It was just that she had no interest in me and never tried to get to know me. Most of the relatives from Tom's artsy family side were also involved in the art scene. There was even a few of them who offered to attend the funeral, but I had to turn them down for the reason being a closed ceremony. You didn't know that Wendy was the daughter of Heather, did you? In any case, you were an awful mother-in-law. She's clearly grieving. Yet you forced her to come to this meaningless gathering. The buzzing relatives were all judgmental towards Debbie. No, I didn't mean. Debbie looked flustered. Tried to say something in her defense, but her words were all jumbled and incomprehensible. Hearing the commotion, Tom rushed towards us through the crowd. He looked startled at the sight of me, and then immediately glared at Debbie. Debbie, what have you done? No, Tom, I didn't. Wendy. Tom turned to me, ignoring Debbie's mumble, and said, You better go back to the funeral now. I am so sorry, Wendy. She troubled you at a difficult time. He gave me a warm hug and prompted me to leave. I hastily walked out of the house toward my car. No, this is not what you think. Please, listen. I heard Debbie's desperate scream coming out of the house, but I could care less at that point. I drove as fast as I could to the ceremony and was able to see my mother's coffin lowered into the ground. My brother was a little upset that I had left him alone to deal with everything, but I told him what really happened. What a pain in the butt. He was sympathetic and even seemed to be holding back his anger. A few days after the burial, Paul was able to finish his work and returned. We went to the gravesite to pray together. He deeply mourned my mother's passing, saying that he had respected her craftsmanship even before we met. Since the incident, Tom demanded a divorce from Debbie. He had been troubled by her, who tended to be vain and out of control, just because she was a wife of a famous artist. When he was shown the insane behavior of pulling me out of a funeral to help at her party, he became completely disgusted with her. Debbie, who quit her job after marrying Tom and had been living a comfortable life as a housewife, is baffled and is resisting the divorce. Paul says if it went to trial, she would have no chance. Debbie had spent a large sum of Tom's saving in vain, and he has kept all the bank settlements as proof. I wonder if she would be able to make ends meet on her own after living a comfortable life as a housewife. But I remind myself that there is no need for me to worry about her. Our plan, my sister and brother are planning to move, so my mom won't come and bother them. Wow, seriously? She's been a pain in the neck to everyone in our family. By the way, hon, if you don't mind, shall we move too? During the business trip, I was asked to work there. You mean in Paris? Yeah. I know it might be a lot of trouble for you, but I'm astounded by the sudden, such a big suggestion. Relocating in Paris. It doesn't sound real to me. I have my mother's grave to take care of, and of course my work. So it's hard to decide right now, but sure, if you want to give it a try, I'll go along with you. I want to trust the person next to me. If my mother was here, she would push my back and say, "You go and take care of him." At his side. New life in a new environment. With this thought, I feel my gaze naturally look straight ahead. My mother's death was painful, and the series of events that followed was like a storm. By overcoming them, I will walk forward with Paul at my side.
Hey, Judy. What's wrong? It's a cold day when Christmas songs are played everywhere in the city. I stopped to look at a tree ornament that caught my eye. My husband, whose white breaths are clinging in the air, turns his head to look at me from a few steps ahead. He smiles softly, his ears red from the cold. I adore the way he looks at me. Nothing? Let's go home and have dinner. It's a hot stew for an especially cold day. I've already prepared it. Sounds great. Laughing, we hold hands and walk down the street. From somewhere, a familiar Christmas song comes into my ears. I'm Judy. What I'm about to tell you is a rather strange Christmas miracle I experienced a few years ago, and the story leading up to it. You're late. Before I could say anything, I cringed at the anger hurled at me by my husband, Dan. Where have you been? Well, I just went to the closest deli. It was the middle of December, when it felt like it was about to snow. His cuss words chased me out of the cold without my coat just a short time ago. Are you trying to fool me? I'm the breadwinner of this household. When I come home, I expect the proper dinner to be ready and served. Can't you even manage such an easy task? He grimaced at me in front of the dinner. No hot sauce. And how come you look blasé about it? There's no way to eat chicken wings without it. Don't mess with me. I was scolded so harshly that I rushed out of the apartment with a wallet and just came back with a hot sauce. As I gasped for my breath, he became even more irritated with me. Deli? Are you crazy? Isn't it cheaper to buy at a supermarket? He pointed at the hot sauce and rolled his eyes. You have no sense of budgeting. I couldn't resist retorting to that. Of course, I buy groceries at the supermarket, but it's far away. I told you earlier it slipped my mind to buy it today. Anyway, you get upset if the food gets cold. That's why I went to the closest shop. I did forget to add it to my shopping list and had it run out, but I was sure the chicken wings tasted fine even without it. I didn't get why he was so angry about it. His anger didn't cool down at all. God darn it! Where's your apology? I did earlier, didn't I? What's with your attitude? You're the one. My retort added oil to the fire. He continued throwing his temper at me for another hour. Who wants such stale food now? In the end, He flipped the plate with chicken wings and went out to get dinner outside. A few days later, I went to clean my parents' house that was up on sale and stopped by an old lady whom I called Grandma in the neighborhood. "Listen, Grandma, your prediction was off for the first time." I didn't predict anything. The grandma who cared for me since I was a little girl said I was going too far and laughed ambiguously. "No way! Everything you predicted since I was a kid came true. If they weren't predictions, then prophecies?" I gave my wry smile. "When you told me not to go to the mall once, there was a lightning strike, and it almost burnt down the mall. Another time, when I said I was going to relax at home all day, you advised me to go out because it was going to be sunny. I wasn't up for it, but you insisted, so I went out reluctantly and found out my house was robbed. If I was at home, I would have had to face the robber for sure." I still get the chill down my spine when I remembered about it. The robber was caught later on with a knife in his pocket. What if I was at home on that day? The thought made me cringe. Other than these, her predictions came true like she was a real prophet. "Hey, Grandma." "Yes?" Even though she said it was all in my mind, or just a coincidence, she listened to me when my voice became serious. "I don't think I would have been prepared for my mom's illness if you hadn't told me, especially she was my only family. My mom also said you gave her peace of mind. You told her that I would be blessed with something on one Christmas not far away. She was relieved to know that I would have a bright future before she left me behind. My mom told me about it in her hospital bed. It was a ray of hope for her, and seeing her content about it was a sign of her love for me. That's why when Dan proposed to me on Christmas Day, I thought it was just as you predicted. I met him through a mutual friend. He seemed to be a humble and gentle guy then, but once we got married, he turned into an arrogant husband. Just like the hot sauce incident, he got upset with trivial matters. He put his hands over the food and said it was too cold to eat, or a salad was too lukewarm for him. He was the one who played on his phone, ignoring the food for a long time. Not only about food, but he also criticized the way I cleaned the apartment and washed clothes. Almost everything I did wasn't up to his liking, which made me feel trapped and suffocated. I don't want to go back home to him. I couldn't help but whine at Grandma as I felt a sting up in my nose. Now, it's almost sunset. Don't you have to go back and cook dinner?" Looking at the sky, she rushed me, being slow to move. Feeling softly rejected, I stood up lazily. "You're going to be okay, as long as you stand on your ground. Even though you'll have struggles, you are going to be happy one day. You'll have a Christmas that will make you jump up and down in joy. So, just live straight and truthfully. God is watching." I quickly turned around at the words that softened my heavy heart. "Is it a prophecy?" "Let's see. I'm just an old woman." She gave me another ambiguous smile and baffled me. "Let's see. If I put more effort, Dan might change." I switched my mood, thinking it might have been too early to judge her original prediction. But then, "Dinner, massage, iron my shirt." Dan's hostility toward me got worse and worse. It wasn't even a year since we got married, but it became normal for him to order me around, and instead of a single kind word, He was constantly grumpy and overbearing. "Who do you think you are?" "Why? What did I do?" He was upset with me again one night. "You don't have the decency to welcome me back home. Who do you think you are to hang around outside until now? I have to warm up my food in a microwave. God darn you." His menace made me sigh. "I told you, right? I had a co-op meeting tonight. I even left a note on the table for you." "Shut up! That's not an excuse for lazy cooking." "What do you mean? I didn't cut corners. I prepared the main and sides as usual." "If it's not freshly cooked, it's called cutting corners." His logic was messed up. I should be prioritized before anyone and anything. I've been feeding you. You're my wife. You must obey me. That's crazy. I was stunned by his incomprehensible demand. He stood on his dignity and proclaimed, "You have no family and relatives and can't live on your own. A scum like you should shut up and just worship me. If you can't, I'll divorce you." He smirked at me. It seemed to me that he was releasing his stress by making me obey him. "Anyway, give me a foot massage." I tried my best to restrain myself from snapping back at him. He would have just become angrier anyway. Most of all, I had nowhere to go in the midst of sleet at night. So I sat down on the floor to give him a massage. My life continued as such until one day I fainted from excruciating pain in the middle of grocery shopping and was taken to the hospital by ambulance. I don't understand. My mind went blank as my doctor explained my condition. "This virus is transmitted by sexual intercourse. I had your husband get tested as well. Both of you have it. You didn't realize it as there was no symptom. As far as I could tell, you need surgery. I'm very sorry to say this, but I think the chance of conceiving in the future seems extremely unlikely." Regardless of his concern, he told me clearly and left. Dan followed the doctor in a hurry. I couldn't have a baby. As I repeated to myself what I'd been told, my blank mind slowly filled up with darkness. I needed to find out more. I tried to follow my doctor and Dan with my wobbly legs. "Wait, Doctor, Dan!" But I froze when I heard what they were talking about. "So, must everyone I've been with get tested?" "Exactly. They must be treated all at once. Otherwise, there's no point as it keeps coming back to you." "Would they know what the test is for?" "Of course." I listened with despair to the conversation between Dan, who was persistent, and my doctor, who was getting annoyed with him. The bottom line seems to be that Dan has had at least 3 girlfriends and is still seeing them. I complained to a picture of my mom in an empty room. I had a hope, you know. Even though he is not a good husband now, he might change once we have a baby. I kept the words of Grandma that I was going to struggle, but I would eventually be happy, like a good luck charm. I guess I was wrong. In fact, Dan seemed to only care about his own health. He was sensitive to his own condition and went to the hospital diligently, but he never showed any concern for me. As I lost my parents, I had a strong longing for having my own baby. I hoped for a happy family with a husband, children, and me. My tears rained down hard on a picture of my mom in my hands. "Mom!" A sob escaped from the gap between the fingers that clamped over my mouth. Dan suddenly appeared then. What are you wasting your time for? You haven't prepared dinner yet. Here are the divorce papers. This is your punishment for neglecting your master and making a fuss. He noisily came into the room and rained the papers down on my head as I was sitting down. You are irritatingly depressing. I'm ready to divorce you anytime. No problem for me. You're the one who's gonna be in trouble, right? Instead of slacking, do your duty if you don't want a divorce. I'm not slacking. Oh wait, there's one more punishment. I'm not giving you the living expenses this month. He looked happy, smirking, and came closer to me. I'm giving you, a scum, a chance to reflect and change your attitude. Know your place. If you disobey me, a divorce. When he finished with all he has to say, he left the room looking refreshed. Divorce. I felt my feelings cool down at the sight of Dan's signatures on the papers. Mom, I decided. Wiping my tears from the picture frame, I spoke to my smiling mother. Watch over me. Then I kept quiet and continued living with Dan for a while. He treated me like a servant as usual and took out his fits of anger on me. I argued back here and there, but mostly passed the days in silence. And one day, I've told you already, I can't eat lukewarm salad, and cold stew is out of the question. How long does it take for you to get things right? As he began his tantrum, I sighed internally and decided to act on my plan. If I don't obey, you are getting a divorce, right? Right, you remember that at least. If you don't want me to leave you, reflect on your stupidity. He sneered and leaned back in a chair. You are a bit weak upstairs, aren't you? What the? He fluttered his eyes in surprise at my reply. What did you just say? I looked at him, whose expression showed his disbelief. You repeat the same thing every time. Do you know what vocabulary is? You only utter the word divorce over and over. Your lack of vocabulary is quite sad. What the heck? Let's get a divorce. It's totally fine with me. I'll be a stranger to you just as you wish. What the? Are you serious? I smiled and said my farewell words to him, whose mouth was agape, and he even forgot to get angry as usual. I've already moved all my necessary things out of here. If there's anything you don't need, just throw it away. Goodbye. I shuffled off the apron I had bought when I got married and folded it lightly. I placed it gently in front of him and put the house keys on top of it. I looked at him one last time. Then I left the house with my pre-packed suitcase. What the heck is going on? His voice chased after me as if he snapped out of his confusion. I could care less. Yay, I'm free. I pretended not to hear anything. With a refreshed feeling, I made my way lightly to my parents' house, where I decided to live again. 1 year since then, the divorce was already finalized, yet Dan continued contacting me. You are sorry, aren't you? I'll take you back if you apologize. A wife should... and so on. I had turned off notifications and ignored the non-stop texts coming in, which I'd never experienced in my marriage. After much persistence, I decided to have a final face-to-face meeting with him at his parents' house. Why have you been ignoring me? Dan, who seemed to behave in front of his parents, spoke to me in a sensible way. I've been texting you all this time, but you never replied once. Oh yeah, I turned off the notification from you. Why? It was too annoying. I am annoying? Me? Yes, you. So, what do you want to talk to me about? You are. His face slowly turned red with anger as I answered him in a deliberately annoyed manner. What's with your attitude in front of my parents? What the heck do you... Oops, my bad. He finally shouted louder, but then he remembered where he was and uttered an apology that he had never made in his marriage. I thought to myself, wow, amazing. He knows how to apologize. I tried my best to resist the urge to make fun of it and prompted onward. What do you need to talk to your ex-wife you divorced about? He cut to the chase, puzzled, but my attitude remained casual in the presence of his parents. Hold on. Why are you acting so strange? Aren't you struggling after the divorce? How are you living now? He made it sound like he was concerned about me, yet he never came to check on me, even though he knew where I was. I don't mind getting back together if that's what you want. Doesn't it make you happy? Not at all. I almost laughed so hard seeing his overconfidence. It doesn't make me happy and doesn't help me in any way. I'm making enough income to support myself. Besides, the living expenses you were giving me were only $500 a month. It wasn't even enough for what we needed. I mean, you're the one who's struggling to manage such an amount without me, right? The cost I was covering for you are gone. And I'm much more comfortable being alone now. I don't understand the point of getting back together after being free. I pretended to be baffled, to which he was clearly agitated. What? You were supposed to be a housewife. I mean, the detail of our finance isn't what we're here to talk about. Unsettled by the presence of his parents, he mumbled, Listen, Dan, stop acting like a little kid who got caught doing mischief and calm down a bit. There's no point in trying to make yourself look good. They know all your secrets. What secrets? I signed him to be quiet and revealed the answers. You're mistaken about me. I wasn't just a housewife. I told you that I used to live abroad because of my late father's work, right? I used the German I learned back then to translate at home. There were many materials on the bookshelves, you know. I didn't care for those. Those were the materials and manuscripts before translation. You never touched those since you had no interest, right? Thanks to that, I was able to hide some equipment to record you. Wait. He was stunned by the word recording. It was his father who presented the real thing in front of him. See? All your secrets, like how you used to treat me, are out now. Your parents were in tears watching this and apologized to me. They are ashamed to have raised a son who treated me horribly. Being under the spotlight almost made him run for the hills. But his mother grabbed him and made him seated again. She signed me with her eyes, and I replied by pulling out the papers. These are copies of our divorce papers. There were parts marked with a red circle, which I pointed to Dan. You know them, don't you? No way. It was understandable for him to be in such a shock. What I pointed to him were the witness signatures. On it were written the names of someone he knew very well. Actually, there wasn't enough space. You had more than 2 girlfriends, right? Wait a sec. No more waiting. Before I could continue, a resentful voice was the first to echo. Dan, you never told us about STD. We only have a relationship with you. That means you brought it in from somewhere else, didn't you? I mean, what am I, a fling? Didn't you say we'll get married one day? That's a statement only a bachelor should say. Oh no. We watched the video too. You are a villain not only to us, but to all women. You are the #1 public enemy. You are finished." Surrounded by his girlfriends, Dan crumbled to the floor. At such a son, his parents made exaggerated sighs. I had a private detective look into his girlfriends and secretly contacted them. Of course, I had told my ex-in-laws the whole story too. The result was this chaos. "Your game is up now." No! There was a strong request from his parents that their son needed punishment. All his girlfriends and I demanded compensation from him. He worked for a company owned by a family member of his mother, so the payments were deducted from the payroll to prevent him from escaping. He was forcibly taken back to his parents' home, and under their strict supervision, he was facing a long period of compensation payments. 6 years have passed since then. "Hey Judy, what's wrong?" It's a cold day when Christmas songs are played everywhere in the city. I stopped to look at a tree ornament that caught my eye. My husband, whose white breaths are clinging in the air, turns his head to look at me from a few steps ahead. He's smiling softly, his ears red from the cold. The little girl in his arms also has rosy cheeks. I adore them so much. Grandma's prediction is actually amazing. I murmured to myself. My current husband is, surprisingly, the brother of one of Dan's girlfriends. I hit it up with the girlfriends afterward and hang out sometimes. I met him by chance, and he gently soothed my depression. It's really a strange story. If it wasn't for what happened with Dan, I'm sure I wouldn't even have met my current husband. So that's what Grandma meant when she said, "I'll struggle, but I'll be happy." I'm once again amazed by Grandma's prediction. Moreover, after we got married, I got pregnant, which was said to be extremely unlikely. I remember when I got sick on Christmas Day. I was rushed to the emergency room where the doctor indicated I was pregnant. I was literally jumping up and down with my husband, and the annoyed nurse scolded us to keep calm and rest. It was a true Christmas miracle. This time of year makes me think about it deeply. I've been hurt a lot by Dan, but now I'm so happy. "Mommy!" I come out of my thoughts when my daughter leaves my husband's arms and clings to me in her fuzzy coat. "Nothing. Let's go home and have dinner. It's hot stew for an especially cold day. I've already prepared it." "Sounds great." "Yay!" Laughing, we held hands and walked down the street. From somewhere, a familiar Christmas song comes into my ears.